Picture a room where the air itself can hurt you. Now fill it with fire that never goes out, iron that will take the skin off your palm in less than a second, and a hammer heavy enough to break your foot if your grip slips. Add smoke that turns your spit black, coal dust that works its way into every crack in your skin, and a man twice your size who measures your worth by how long you can keep pumping a bellows without fainting. That's a blacksmith's forge in the year 1371, the most necessary building in any medieval town, and one of the most dangerous places you could possibly spend your childhood. A place where you could shoe a warlord's horse in the morning and watch your best friend's hand get ruined by evening. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists admiring the romantic glow of the forge fire from a safe distance. We're living it. One day, one boy. Everything he would have seen, smelled, heard, lifted, dropped, burned himself on and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still don't know whether you actually fall asleep to them, or whether you just lie there in the dark, wide awake, quietly grateful that you've never had to hold a piece of white-hot iron with a pair of tongs, while a very large man shouts at you about your grip. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Here we go. The burn on your left hand is already open again. You know this before you're even properly awake, because it's the burn that wakes you. You rolled onto it in your sleep. The blister split somewhere in the night, and now the raw skin underneath is stuck to the rough wool of your blanket. Peeling it free slowly in the dark, teeth pressed together so you don't make a sound, is the first thing you do today. It will not be the worst thing you do today. It's not yet dawn. You know that too without opening your eyes, because the cock in the yard behind the tannery hasn't started up yet, and the forge below you is quiet. Not cold, never cold. Even now, banked under its blanket of ash for the night, the fire down there is alive, and the heat of it rises up through the floorboards of the loft where you sleep, and that heat is the only reason you haven't frozen to death in the 4 winters you've spent in this town. Your name is what? Walter, if the priest is asking. Walter, son of Edmund, from a village 2 days' walk to the north that nobody in this city has ever heard of. You are 14 years old. You've been apprenticed to Master Aldous the smith since you were 10, since your father put your hand into the master's enormous scarred one in front of witnesses, and the master promised to feed you, house you, beat you no more than was reasonable, and teach you the mystery of working iron. Your father got 3 shillings for you. You remember watching the coins go into his purse. You remember thinking it seemed like a lot of money. You know better now. 3 shillings is what Master Aldous charges for a single well-made spade. Your entire childhood was worth 1 spade. And here is the problem. The thing that has been sitting on your chest like a stone for 3 days now. The thing that makes this particular morning dangerous before it has even begun. The priory order is late. 40 hinges, 60 pounds of nails, 4 great door bolts, each one as long as your forearm. All of it promised to the prior of St. Leonard's for the new guest hall he's building. All of it due yesterday. And as of last night, when you finally banked the fire and crawled up the ladder with your arms shaking, 11 hinges still sat unfinished on the bench. The prior's steward came to the door twice yesterday. The second time, Master Aldous went out into the street to speak with him, and you couldn't hear the words through the wall, but you could hear the shape of them, and the shape was bad. A smith who fails a priory doesn't just lose one order, he loses the next one and the one after that, because monks talk to other monks, and stewards talk to other stewards, and reputation in this trade is the only thing that stands between a workshop full of apprentices and a man selling his anvil to pay his debts. So today the fire gets lit early, earlier than early. Today you work like the devil is behind you, because in a manner of speaking, he is. You sit up on your pallet. The loft is barely tall enough for you to sit upright. The thatch is a hand's width above your head, and you can hear things moving in it. Mice or worse, the small dry rustle of creatures who live in every roof in this city. Beside you, Hob is still asleep. Hob is the other apprentice, a year younger than you, a butcher's son from the parish of St. Peter, who cried every night for his first month and now snores like a grown man. He sleeps with both hands curled against his chest, the way you all learn to sleep, protecting them without knowing you're doing it. A smith's hands are his entire fortune. Even asleep, some part of you knows it. You shake his shoulder. He groans, says a word the priest would fine him for, and burrows deeper into the blanket. Fire, you say. That's the whole conversation. That's all it ever needs to be. The fire has to be woken before the master comes down, and waking the fire is apprentice work. And if the master comes down to a cold hearth on the morning the priory order is late, then God help you both. You go down the ladder in the dark, bare feet finding the rungs from memory, and the smell rises up to meet you. Understand something about this smell, because it is the smell of your whole life now. The smell that has soaked into your skin and your hair, and your one spare shirt so completely that when you went home to your village last Michaelmas, your own mother said you smelled like a burned house. It's coal smoke first, sharp and mineral and slightly sour, nothing like the honest wood smoke of a kitchen. Under that, the flat grey smell of ash, drifts of it, ash in every corner and every crack, no matter how often you sweep. Under that hot metal which doesn't smell like anything else on God's earth, a clean, hungry, almost bloody smell that gets into the back of your throat. Then hoarse, from the shoeing that happens in the doorway. Then the vinegar reek of the slack tub, the great wooden trough of quenching water that has had 10,000 pieces of burning iron plunged into it, and has boiled itself into something that is no longer really water, and under all of it, faint but always there, you. Your own sweat worked into the dirt floor over 4 years, layered with the sweat of every apprentice who slept in that loft before you, going back farther than anyone can remember. Welcome to the forge of Aldous Ferrer, on Smith's Row, in the city of Norwich, in the 45th year of the reign of King Edward, the third of that name, the year of our Lord 1371, Norwich. Say it the way the locals do, swallowing half the sounds. It is the second city of England. Only London is bigger, and the men of Norwich will tell you at length, whether you asked or not, that London is bigger only in the way a dung heap is bigger than a granary. 25 churches inside the walls when your father was a boy. More than 50 now. So many that they say you cannot stand anywhere in this city without seeing at least 2 towers. A castle on its great mound in the middle of everything. A huge blind cube of pale stone squatting over the market like a fist on a table. A cathedral down by the river with a spire they have been building and rebuilding for as long as anyone can remember, wrapped in wooden scaffolding like a splint on a broken finger. And around all of it, the city wall, 2.5 miles of flint and mortar, longer than the wall of London itself, finished within living memory, and pierced by 12 gates that shut at curfew whether you're inside or not. Your father's whole village would fit in the cattle market with room left over for the geese, but you're not thinking about any of that this morning. You're kneeling at the hearth in the dark, and you're doing the first skilled thing you ever learned. The thing Master Aldous made you practice for a solid month before he let you touch anything else. You're waking the fire. A banked fire is not a dead fire. Last night, before you climbed the ladder, you raked the coals into a mound and buried them in ash. And all night they have been sleeping in there, dull red hearts wrapped in grey. Now you take the small iron rake and you open the mound the way you might open a loaf of bread, carefully from the side, and there they are. Embers, maybe a dozen of them still holding heat, glowing that deep transparent orange that has no name, the colour you only ever see inside a fire. You feed them. Not coal, not yet. Coal would smother them. First the tinder, dry furs and wood shavings from the box you filled yesterday, because filling that box is your job, and forgetting it once, in your first year, earned you a stroke of the master's belt that you can still remember individually, separate from all the other strokes. The shavings catch with a sound like a whisper. Then small charcoal, broken to the size of walnuts. Then, only when the flame stands up on its own and begins to talk, the sea coal, the black stone that burns, shovelled on in a careful ring so the fire has somewhere to breathe. And then the bellows. You should know about the bellows, because the bellows are going to own your morning, the way they own every morning. They hang beside the hearth, two great leather lungs, each one longer than your arm, their boards worn smooth and dark as church pews by generations of apprentice hands. They work one after the other, up and down, so the blast of air into the fire never stops, and the handle rises against your pull and sinks against your push, and there is a weight and a resistance to it that no one who hasn't done it can imagine. The first week you worked them 4 years ago, you couldn't lift a spoon to your mouth at supper. Your arm simply refused. Hob, in his first week, wept at the bellows, silently, tears cutting white lines down his black face while he kept pumping, because stopping was worse than weeping, and even the master pretended not to see. Now your arms do it without you. Pull, and the leather wheezes as it drinks the air. Push, and it exhales into the heart of the fire, and the coals answer, brightening from red to orange to a fierce pale gold, and sparks stream up into the black chimney like a river running the wrong way. Pull, push, the wheeze and the roar. It is the breathing of a great animal, and you are its lungs, and by full daylight the fire is no longer a fire but a small captive sun sitting in a nest of black stone, so hot that you cannot look directly into its centre, so hot that it dries the tears in your eyes at 10 paces. Above you the floorboards creak. The master is awake. Hob comes scrambling down the ladder a heartbeat later, hair full of straw, and grabs the water buckets without being told, because the slack tub is low and the drinking jug is empty, and both of those are his fault if anyone asks, and he's out the door into the grey street before the master's feet hit the bottom stair. Master Aldous is not a giant. That's the first thing that surprises people about him. He stands no taller than the baker next door, but he is built like something that was designed and then reinforced, wide through the shoulders in a way that makes doorways look narrow, and his forearms, bare to the elbow in all weather, are so dense with muscle that the veins sit on top of them like cords laid over stone. His beard is half grey and singed short on the left side permanently because that's his hearth side. His face and arms are speckled all over with small dark marks, dozens of them, each one a spark that landed and burned and healed, 40 years of them, a map of every fire he has ever stood beside. When he takes your wrist to correct your hammer grip, His palm feels like a wooden board wrapped in leather. You have seen him pick up iron that was still black hot, iron that would blister you through a glove, pick it up bare-handed to move it 3 inches on the anvil, and not change his expression. This morning he says nothing. That's how you know how bad it is. On an ordinary morning there's a grunt, a glance at the fire, maybe a word about the weather coming through the smoke hole. This morning he walks straight to the bench, counts the finished hinges with one blunt finger, counts them again, and stands there looking at the 11 bare iron strips that are supposed to become the rest of them. Eat standing, he says, both of you. We strike while there's light, and we don't stop while there's light. If the steward comes, you say nothing, you look at your work and you send him to me. Breakfast is a heel of yesterday's bread and a cup of small ale, and you eat it exactly as instructed, standing at the bench, chewing with one side of your mouth while your hands are already sorting nail rod by thickness, because your hands have learned that in this building they are never allowed to be empty. The bread is dense, grey, gritty with the stone dust that gets into all bread everywhere, and you feel your teeth grind against it, and you swallow it half chewed, because the fire is ready and the fire does not wait. Let me tell you what a hinge is, because you are about to make 11 of them and it is going to take everything you have. A hinge for a priory door is not the little bright thing on a cupboard. It is a strap of iron as long as your arm from elbow to fingertip, thick as your thumb at the socket end, tapering along its whole length, ending in a shaped finial, because the prior is paying for God's house, and God's house does not get plain ends. One edge of it must be rolled around a mandrel into a perfect barrel to take the pin, and that barrel must be true, because a hinge with a crooked barrel binds, and a great oak door that binds on its hinge will, over years, tear itself off the wall. Monks will be opening this door long after you're dead. The master has said this to you more than once, in exactly those words, and he says it not as poetry, but as a specification. Long after you are dead. Build accordingly. Your part of it starts with the fire. Managing the fire during forging is its own craft, and it's yours now, promoted to it last winter, which sounds like an honour until you understand what it means. It means you stand in the heat. Hob works the bellows behind you. You stand at the hearth itself, and you read the fire, and you place the iron in it, and you know by colour and by time and by a sense you cannot explain when the metal is ready. Iron talks to you with colour, black, then the first dull red like a sunset through smoke, then cherry, then bright orange, then yellow, then a pale searing lemon white, and each colour is a different metal, behaving a different way under the hammer. Bring it out too cool, and the master's hammer bounces, and his arm takes the shock, and his eyes come up to you, and that look is worse than the belt. Bring it out too hot, into the sparking white where the iron itself begins to burn, throwing off fat hissing stars, and you have ruined the metal, burned the body of it, and iron costs money. And the cost of ruined iron comes out of nobody's hide but yours. So you stand in the heat and you watch. The left side of your face is always hotter than the right. By mid-morning your left cheek will feel tight and dry, like the skin is a size too small, and your eyes will sting from staring into brightness, and there will be a white line of salt down the middle of your back, where the sweat runs and dries and runs again. You hold the work in the fire with tongs at arm's length, and even at arm's length the heat presses on your knuckles like a hand pushing you away. Everything in this trade pushes you away. The whole craft is learning to stand in the place your body is screaming at you to leave. The iron comes to colour, You lift it out and the heat of it makes the air above it shiver and bend, and you turn one step, exactly one step. This turn is choreographed like a dance, because two people moving fast in a small room with burning metal will kill each other if the steps aren't fixed, and you lay it on the anvil face, scale side down, and the master's hammer is falling before the iron has even settled. The sound of a working forge is not the picturesque clang of a story. It is a rhythm, and the rhythm is language. The master strikes the iron, one heavy blow, and then a light tap on the bare anvil, letting the hammer bounce and rest for half a heartbeat, while he reads what the metal did. And then the iron again. Ding, tick, ding, tick. When he needs you to strike too, when the work is heavy and wants the sledge, he changes the rhythm, taps twice on the anvil horn, and that means take up the great hammer, and then you strike where his small hammer touches, exactly where it touches and nowhere else. His tap and your blow tap, crash, tap, crash, his hand and your strength, and if you miss the spot he marks, if your sledge lands a thumb's width wrong, you can spoil an hour's work in one stroke, or, worse, catch the tongs and send a pound of yellow hot iron spinning across the room. There is a burn scar on the doorpost at the height of a man's head, a black comet-shaped char in the oak from the year before you came, from an apprentice whose name the master never says, and under all of it, all morning, the scale. When hot iron is worked, its skin flakes off, a grey-black crust called scale that jumps from under the hammer with every blow. It skitters across the anvil, it lands on the floor, and lies there glowing like tiny dying coals, and it lands on you. On your forearms, on the backs of your hands, once in a while, despite the leather apron, down inside the collar of your shirt, and every apprentice knows the particular dance of a lad with a live flake of scale inside his shirt, the frantic slap and shimmy, and every master knows the rule, which is that you may dance all you like, but you do not ever let go of the tongs. You do not let go of the tongs. It was the first law you learned, the very first day. Whatever happens to your body, the iron stays where you put it. A burn heals. A flying bar of white iron in a room with 3 people does not always leave everyone with a face. By the time the bells of the city churches ring out for terce, mid-morning, 3 hinges are done. 3 and 8 to go, and the day already feels short, and this is when the steward comes. You hear him before you see him. You hear the street go slightly quiet around him, the way it does around any man in good clothes, and then he's standing in the wide doorway of the forge with the morning light behind him, and even the fire seems to lower its voice. Brother Anselm, the prior's steward, is a lean man with soft hands folded into his sleeves and an expression of permanent mild sorrow, as though the world has once again disappointed him precisely as much as he expected it to. You do as you were told. You say nothing. You look at your work. You're suddenly deeply fascinated by a hinge barrel that you've already checked twice. Master Aldous. The steward's voice is quiet. Quiet is what powerful men can afford. The prior asks after his ironwork. The master sets down his hammer. He does not hurry. He wipes his hands on his apron, which changes nothing about his hands, and he crosses to the doorway, and the 2 of them stand there, the man built of stone and the man built of paper, and it occurs to you, watching sideways while pretending not to watch at all, that of these 2 men, the soft one is the dangerous one. Tomorrow at prime, the master says, delivered and hung, my own hands on the hanging. You said the same 3 days past. 3 days past I had a fever through this house and a carter who never came. Tomorrow at prime. A pause. The fire pops. Somewhere down the row, another smith's hammer keeps its own rhythm, and you can hear in it, absurdly, that whoever it is has an easier day than you. The prior, says Brother Anselm gently, has also had a visit from Master Roger at the Westwick gate. Master Roger says he could supply the same work within the week, and at a better price. And there it is. That's the knife, produced softly from the sleeve. Roger of Westwick, whose forge is bigger, whose sons are grown journeymen, who has wanted the priory's custom for 10 years, and circles it like a dog circling a table. The master does not blink. Master Roger's hinges, he says, are on the almonry door that dropped its corner into the mud last Candlemas. Ask the prior how the price feels now. Tomorrow at prime, brother. Hung true, and true in 50 years, and I'll stand under the arch and swing the door myself before I take a penny. Brother Anselm looks at him for a long moment. Then his gaze moves, deliberately past the master, into the shop, over the bench, over the 8 bare strips of iron, over hob frozen at the bellows, over you. He is counting. You realise with a small cold feeling that this man can count unfinished hinges from 30 feet through smoke, and that he has done exactly that, and that when he says, "Tomorrow at prime then," in his soft sorrowful voice, it is not agreement. It is a sentence being passed. He goes. The street noise closes behind him like water. Master Aldous stands in the doorway a moment longer with his back to you. His shoulders don't move. Then he turns around, and his face is exactly the same as it always is, and he says, "What? Fire, hob, wind. What are you looking at?" "You're looking at nothing, master. You are never looking at anything. Ding, tick, wheeze, roar." But he works differently after that. You've learned to read him the way you read iron, by small changes of colour, and the change is this. He stops teaching. On an ordinary day, the master teaches without seeming to. A word here, a tilt of the work so you can see, mind the taper, watch how she moves when I strike the edge. Now the words stop. Now there is only the rhythm, faster than before, and the iron coming to the fire and leaving it, and your world narrows to colour and heat, and the ache spreading slowly like water soaking into cloth, from your wrist to your elbow to your shoulder, and the raw burn on your left palm, which has stuck to the tong handle and torn free and stuck again so many times that it has stopped being pain and become weather, a climate your hand lives in. You want to know what the work actually feels like. Not looks like, feels like. Because that's the part nobody tells you. The part the old men leave out when they get sentimental about the honest craft of the smith. Take the sledgehammer. 9 pounds of iron on a hickory shaft as long as your leg. 9 pounds is nothing. You can lift 9 pounds with a finger. Now lift it 200 times. Now lift it 200 times accurately. The weight is not in the hammer. The weight is in the repetition, in the way each swing borrows a little from your spine and your knees, and the small muscles between your ribs that you did not know you had until the day they all reported for duty, and then the following morning all resigned at once. Your palms hardened in the first year into something that no longer blisters from the shaft, a thick yellow armour of callus. But under the callus the flesh still bruises deep, and by evening the bones of your hands will hum like a struck bell, hums after the sound has stopped, and the skin, God, the skin. Every smith's hands are cracked, always, everywhere. The heat pulls the water out of your skin faster than your body can put it back, and the coal dust gets into the cracks and tattoos them black, and the cracks open at the knuckles when you make a fist, tiny lines of red in the black, and in winter they never close at all. Hob's mother, the one time she visited, took his hands in hers, turned them over, and cried right there in the doorway. And Hob was mortified, furious, 13 years old and blushing like a coal, because to him they were just his hands now. That's what this trade does first. Before it teaches you anything about iron, it takes your hands and gives you back a different pair. At midday the charcoal runs short. You know it before the master says it, because minding the fuel is your charge, and you have been watching the charcoal bin go down all morning, with the particular dread of a boy watching an hourglass. Sea coal alone won't do for the fine work. It burns dirty, full of sulphur that gets into the iron and makes it red short, brittle when hot, and a hinge forged over foul coal can crack under the hammer with a sound like a snapped bone. For the welds, for the rolled barrels, you need charcoal, and the bin holds maybe an hour more, and the master looks at it, and looks at you, and says one word, Coleman's, which means run. You're out the door before the word has finished landing, and the city hits you all at once, the way it always does, like walking from a dark room into a fair. Smith's Row first, your own street, and you know it with your feet, every rut and stone. 6 forges within a bowshot of each other, and the reason they are all together is the reason the tanners are all together and the fullers are all together. Because the city, in its wisdom, likes its stinks and its dangers gathered where it can watch them. A street of smiths is a street of fire in a city built of timber and thatch, and everyone knows it. And that knowledge sits under the whole quarter like a floor everyone pretends not to feel. Each doorway you pass breathes its own wall of heat at you. Each anvil has its own voice, this one high and ringing, that one flat and dull, and a smith can tell you whose shop he's passing with his eyes shut. The noise of the row never stops in daylight hours, 6 rhythms overlapping, out of time with each other, like bells rung by madmen, and you have lived inside this noise so long that silence, real silence, on your one visit home, kept you awake all night. It felt like something was wrong with the world, like the world's heart had stopped. Then out of the row and into the market, and here I need you to slow down and actually look. Even though Watt can't, even though Watt is dodging through it all at a dead run with his empty sack over his shoulder. The marketplace of Norwich is one of the largest in England, a great sloping wedge of ground below the castle, and on a working day it holds more people than exist in the entire 100 where you were born. There are no aisles. There is no plan you can see. There are rows that the regulars know. The fishmongers here where the ground slopes so the mess runs downhill. The wool merchants there, upslope, upwind, because money buys air, and everything alive and dead in between. Geese in wicker cages screaming like drowning men. A pig, escaped, absolutely delighted, 3 boys after it. Baskets of eels still moving. A woman with a tray of hot pies crying her wares in a voice that has worn a groove in the air after 30 years. Ho what, so worn down it's just a note now, a bird call, and everyone within 100 yards knows the note and what it means without hearing words at all. The smell changes every 10 steps, and your nose reads it like a road. Fish, then blood where the butcher's gutter runs, then bread, blessed bread, warm and enormous, from the baker's stalls, then the sudden green cool smell of cut herbs, then dung, then, weirdly, roses, a woman selling flowers to the wives of merchants, a little island of sweetness holding out against the whole city like the last man on a bridge, and over it all, the castle. You pass through its shadow, actually through it. The shadow lies across the whole market at this hour like a dropped cloak, and you glance up the mound at that vast pale keep. The way you always glance, half a look, the way you'd glance at a sleeping dog the size of a church. It's more than 300 years old. The conqueror's men raised the mound, his son raised the stone. Nobody attacks Norwich anymore, and the great cube stands mostly empty above the city it was built to frighten, used now as the county jail, so that the oldest and mightiest building you have ever seen is, in your time, a box for keeping poachers and debtors. The men who piled that mound with baskets and bare hands, thousands of them, forgotten to the last man, and their work still throwing its shadow over your mourning 3 centuries later. You believe in very little that priests haven't told you to believe in, but you believe in that mound. Coleman the charcoal seller keeps his yard by the Wensum, down where the boats come in, and the way there takes you along King Street with the river smell rising to meet you, weed and mud and tar, and the masts showing over the roofs. Norwich is 20 miles from the sea, but the sea comes to it anyway, up the river in barges and keels, and it brings the one thing your whole street lives on: iron. Osmond iron from the North Countries in barrels, Spanish iron in rough bars stacked on the staiths like firewood, each bar worth more than firewood by so much that the merchants keep a man watching the stacks all night. England makes its own iron too, in bloomeries in the wooded hills, but a smith of Norwich works foreign metal as often as not, and it has always seemed strange to you, a small quiet astonishment you've never said out loud, that the hinge on a monk's door in Norfolk began as red dirt in a mountain in Spain, and passed through fire and crossed the sea to end up in your tongs. The whole world flows through a forge if you stand there long enough. Everything men do, they do with iron, and every piece of iron passes over an anvil, and a smith at his hearth is therefore standing, though he looks like he's standing in a dirty shed in a side street at one of the crossroads of the entire world. Coleman is weighing charcoal for someone else when you arrive, and he makes you wait, because he makes everyone wait. It's the only power he has, and he spends it daily. He's a small, soot-coloured man with red-rimmed eyes, and his whole yard is black, black ground, black sacks, black cat, and he looks at you over the scales and says, "Aldous' boy. He'll want it sieved, and he'll want it now, and he'll want it for last month's price. He'll want it good," you say. "The priory work." Coleman's eyebrows go up into his black forehead, leaving trails. Still, word in the yards is Roger of Westwick's already bragging he has it. Your stomach drops an inch. Word in the yards. Already. That's how it goes in this city. Faster than any horse. A soft sentence spoken in a forged doorway before noon is common talk by the river before the bells ring sext. Word in the yards is wrong, you say, and you're surprised by your own voice. How flat it comes out, how much like the master it sounds. "Weigh it, please. We're burning daylight." He weighs it. He even sieves it. And he gives you, silently, a knob of charcoal the size of a fist onto the top of the sack, a maketh weight, which from Coleman is practically an embrace, and as you shoulder the load, 4 stone of it, the sack settling into the meat of your shoulder with that dense, dead weight that charcoal has, he says the only kind thing you'll hear all day. "Tell Aldous," he says, "that Roger's coal comes from me too, and Roger buys the cheap burn." He taps the side of his nose, leaving a black mark on the black. A smith's only as honest as his fire, boy. You carry that back through the whole city, the sack and the sentence both, and somehow the sentence is heavier. Because it's true, and because it cuts both ways, and because the fire waiting for you at home is honest and the time is not. The bells ring sext as you come up Smith's Row at a half-trot noon, the day's hinge itself, and you can hear before you can see that the rhythm in your own doorway has changed. It's faster. It's the sound of a man racing the sun. 8 hinges to go and half the day gone. You eat while working the fire, which the master permits today because today the rules serve the work instead of the other way round. The mistress, Aldith, the master's wife, brings pottage to the forge door herself rather than calling you in. Thick peas pottage with a lump of bacon fat gone soft in it, and you eat it in gulps between heats, standing, the bowl balanced on the corner of the coal bin, and you burn your tongue on the pottage. Which is funny, actually. It's genuinely funny that you can stand all day in air hot enough to cook the pottage from 10 feet away and still burn your tongue on the pottage, and Hob catches you laughing at it with your eyes watering and starts laughing too, and neither of you can explain it. And the master looks at the pair of you giggling like idiots over a fire in the middle of the worst day of the year, and something in his face very nearly moves. Not quite. But you saw the weather change just for a second out over the sea of him. The mistress stands in the doorway a moment, wiping her hands on her apron, counting hinges exactly the way the steward counted them, because make no mistake about who keeps the ledger in this house. Who knows to the penny what the priory pays and what Coleman charges and what a spoiled bar of Spanish iron costs? When she goes back in, she rests her hand on the master's shoulder for one step of her passing, just one, and says nothing, and he says nothing. And you have lived in this house 4 years, and you have learned that this is what 20 years of marriage look like from the outside. One hand, one step, in passing, on the worst day. And then the afternoon, and the afternoon is welding, and welding is the mystery. That word is not decoration. When your father gave you to this trade, the indenture said the master would teach you the art and mystery of the smith, and this is the heart of it. The thing that separates a smith from a strong man with a hammer. Fire welding, making 2 pieces of iron become 1 piece, not joined, not fastened. 1. Each hinge barrel must be welded where the strap rolls back on itself, and a weld is done like this, and I want you to feel every step of it, because what does? Both pieces go into the fire, into the deepest heart of it, into charcoal now, Coleman's good charcoal, and you bury them and you bring the fire up with the bellows until the iron passes through orange, through yellow, up into a colour that is barely a colour at all, a white with the faintest breath of yellow left in it, the colour of the sun through mist, and at that heat the surface of the iron goes wet. It actually looks wet. The metal skin begins to melt and it shines like glass, like honey, and it starts to spit tiny white stars. 1, 2. And that spitting is the iron, telling you now, in the next 3 heartbeats or never. And here is where you matter. You, what? 14 years old with your torn palm and your aching arms, because the master cannot watch the fire and the anvil at once. You call the heat. It's your eyes he's trusting. You watch that wet shine come up, and you sing out, coming to weld, and then now, and on your now everything happens at once. Both pieces come out of the fire-streaming light, so bright they leave green ghosts swimming across your eyes, and they are flung laid, positioned on the anvil in less than a breath, scale flying, and the master's hammer comes down. Not hard. This is the thing nobody expects. A weld is not struck hard. It is struck fast, quick firm blows like a drum roll, tap, 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 squeezing the 2 wet surfaces into each other. And if the heat was right and the surfaces were clean and the sand flux did its work, And if God is not busy elsewhere, the two pieces of iron simply forget they were ever separate. Forever. You can polish the finished barrel and search for the seam, and there is no seam. There is no line, no scar, nothing. Iron has no memory. It is the strangest and most beautiful fact you know. And when a weld fails, it fails in front of everyone. The pieces come apart under the hammer with a dead, splitting sound, a sound like a cough in church, and the shining surfaces you brought together are suddenly grey and crusted and ashamed, and there is nothing to do but back into the fire, clean it, flux it, try again, and every failed weld eats coal and eats time, and today there is no time, and the master knows it, and you know it. And so every single time this afternoon that you sing out now, and the hammer rolls and the iron takes, every single time it is a small battle won in a war being fought against the sun. You do 8 welds between noon and evening. 8 for 8. You will remember this afternoon for the rest of your life, and when you are old you will bore your own apprentices with it, and they will not believe you, and that is fine. That is how it goes. Every smith's finest afternoon happens in an empty street with nobody watching but a boy at the bellows. Somewhere in the middle of it, in the long hypnotic stretch where the work is going well and the rhythm has taken over and your mind, no longer needed for fear, comes loose and drifts, you find yourself watching the master's hands and understanding, for the first time really understanding, what you're being taught. Not hinges. Anybody can be taught hinges. You're being taught judgment under heat. You're being taught that the iron does not care that you are tired, that the fire does not care that you're behind, that the weld will take or fail on the truth of the temperature and not on how much you need it to take. Every other place in your world runs on words, on pleading and promising and the softness of stewards. The anvil is the only honest court in Norwich. The iron cannot be flattered, and it cannot be threatened, and it cannot be lied to. And a boy who spends his youth in front of that particular judge comes out of it, if he comes out of it, with something that other men can feel in him but cannot name. By the light's last usable hour, the hinges are done. All 40, laid out on the bench in ranks like fish on a slab, and the master walks the line of them with a candle, tilting each one to the flame, running his thumb down each barrel, and he sets aside 2 out of 40, and says, "Again, these," and you want to die, but you don't. You rebuild the fire instead, and the 2 are reheated and dressed and trued while full dark comes down outside, and Hob lights the horn lantern, and the last hammer blows of the day fall in a pool of orange light in a black street, and the neighbours know. Everyone on the row knows exactly what it means when Aldous' anvil is still talking after curfew, and not one of them will report it, because every smith on this street has had a night like this, and every smith on this street knows they'll have another. When it's finished, truly finished, the master does something he has never done. He picks up the last hinge, the one your heat and his hammer welded in the dark, and he holds it out to you, not to admire, to hold, and you take it, and it's still warm, deep inside, the way finished iron stays warm for an hour like a loaf, and it's heavier than it looks. They're always heavier than they look, and he says, "Monks will hang their door on that when your grandchildren are dust." He takes it back, lays it with the others, straightens the row by a finger's width. That's the wage, boy. The pennies are just to keep you fed while you earn it. Then he says, "Get to bed," and you go, and you lie in the loft with your hands throbbing in the dark like 2 hearts, and below you the fire settles under its ash, and you are asleep before you can even finish being proud. Prime, the next morning, and you're walking through a city still rubbing its eyes, and you're doing it under load. The handcart holds the nails and the bolts. The hinges go on shoulders, wrapped in sacking, 20 for you and 20 for Hob, and the sacking does almost nothing. The iron finds your collarbone through it within 100 steps and settles there like a decision. The master walks ahead, empty-handed, and that is correct. That is how it should be. The master's hands arrive fresh because the master's hands have work to do at the other end. And anyway, a craftsman walking to a priory behind his own laden apprentices is a kind of sentence too. A sentence the whole street can read. Order complete, house in order, look on and be quiet. St. Leonard's lies outside the walls, across the river, on the hill to the east, and the way there takes you out through Bishopsgate and over Bishop's Bridge, and the bridge is worth your one free glance. Stone, 3 arches, holding up an entire gate tower in the middle of the river like it's no great matter, and under it the Wensum, sliding brown and quiet, the first boats already moving, a heron standing in the shallows with the patience of a saint. On the far bank the ground rises, and there above you is the priory, and above the priory on the top of the hill, the chapel they call St. Michael's on the Mount, and the whole hillside is terraced with the monk's vineyard, actual vines in England, rows of them combed across the slope catching the early sun, and you have seen this view perhaps a dozen times in 4 years, and it stops your breath a little every time, and you would rather be flogged than admit it. The hanging of the doors takes the whole morning, and it is a performance, and the master performs it. Brother Anselm appears within minutes, of course, drawn by whatever sense stewards have, and stands watching with his hands in his sleeves, and the master ignores him with a completeness that is its own form of address. The great oak doors are lifted by 4 lay brothers, groaning like the damned. The hinges are offered up, pinned, driven home. And then Master Aldous, in front of the steward and the watching monks and God and everybody, swings each door with 1 finger. 1 finger, a door of seasoned oak 2 men couldn't carry, and it moves like a thought, silent, and comes to rest exactly where he stops it, and he steps back and says to Brother Anselm in a voice pitched to carry precisely as far as it needs to, 50 years, send for me if I'm wrong. Even the steward's sorrow flickers. Coin changes hands in the priory counting house, the real weight of it going to the master's purse, and on the way out a young monk with ink on his fingers presses a honey cake on each of you boys, quick and shy, like a man committing a small crime, and Hob eats his in 2 bites on the bridge, and you make yours last the whole walk, and to this day you could not tell you which of you was happier. That should be the end of the story. Order delivered, master vindicated, cake obtained. If your life were a tale told by a fireside, it would end there. Your life is not a tale. It's a trade. And a trade is what happens next, and next, and next. And so the afternoon of your triumph finds you doing the thing you hate most in this world. Nails. Understand, the priory order included 60 pounds of nails, and those were made weeks ago. But a forge eats through nail stock the way a household eats bread, because everything in this world is nailed. Ships, coffins, roofs, doors, wagons, saddles, boots. A single new house drinks up thousands, and nail-making is apprentice work, eternally, universally, in every forge in Christendom, because it is the perfect teacher and the perfect punishment in one object. Heat the rod, taper the point, 4 hammer blows turning between each. Notch it at the header, drop it into the nail header, snap the rod and upset the top into a head with 2 strikes. Done. 1 nail. Time. Less than a minute when you're good. Now do it 400 times. That's the afternoon. That's 1,000 afternoons of your life so far, and the boredom of it is a physical substance. You can feel it settling on you like the ash settles, and this is where the trade quietly does its deepest work on you. Because there are two kinds of boys, and the forge finds out which kind you are. There's the kind whose 400th nail is a mangled thing, struck anyhow, because who will ever know? Because it will vanish into a floor joist in some merchant's solar, and no eye will see it again until doomsday. And there's the kind whose 400th nail matches his 40th. The master can tell the two kinds apart by sound alone, from across the shop without turning his head, because good nails have a rhythm and shame has a different one. And here is the thing you have slowly understood. He does not check your nails anymore. He stopped checking sometime last year. You noticed the day he stopped, and you understood that you'd been handed something without a word that could never be handed back, and your nails since that day have been better than they were when he checked. You've thought about that a great deal, at the anvil, in the boredom, in the rhythm. You suspect it is the single most important thing you know. While you make nails, the shop lives its ordinary life around you, and the ordinary life of a forge is the ordinary life of the whole city walking through one doorway. A carter brings a snapped chain, shouting, "Urgent," his load blocking half of Tumbland. The master welds the link while the man stands there. 4 minutes, 6pence, gone. A woman from the Burr Street brings a cooking pot with a burned-through bottom and haggles the patching price down with a persistence that has the master, who faced down a priory steward yesterday, visibly retreating. The barber-surgeon's boy comes with the lancets his master left for sharpening, and you sharpen them yourself. Small work now trusted to you. Oilstone and steel and that slick grey mud the stone raises, testing each edge on your thumbnail where it should bite and stick, and you try not to think about where those edges go next, into whose arm, letting whose blood, and you fail to not think about it, the way you always fail. And the horses come. All day, the horses. Half the trade of a town smith is farriery, and shoeing happens at the doorway where the light is good and the beast can see the street and stay calm, and most of it is peaceful. Old cobs and pack ponies who've been shod 100 times and doze through it. You've learned to love the smell that everyone else flinches at, the burning hoof smell when the hot shoe is pressed to the trimmed foot to check its seat. A great rolling cloud of sulphurous smoke that fills the street, worse than anything, truly foul, and it means nothing. The horse feels nothing. Hoof is only hair grown solid, but every single passerby coughs and curses you, and the horse doesn't even wake up. Tomorrow, though, tomorrow's horse is different, and the whole shop already knows it, because word came at midday with a groom in blue and murrey livery. Sir Miles de Reps rides for Yarmouth on Thursday, and his destrier casts a shoe, and his own farrier is abed with a flux, and the smith on Smith's Row, whose work the priory swears by, that man will attend to it in the morning. The master received this with a nod, as if it were a pot to patch. But that evening he takes down the good aprons, the heavy ones of double ox hide, and hangs them ready by the door. And he tells Hob, briefly and without drama, that tomorrow Hob works the bellows and stays by the hearth, and does not come near the doorway whatever he hears. And Hob, who is 13 and therefore made entirely of curiosity and appetite, opens his mouth to ask why, and the master looks at him, and Hob's mouth closes with a click, and later, in the loft, in the dark, Hob whispers to you, "Have you ever done a warhorse?" And you say no. And he says, "Are you scared?" And you lie there feeling your hands throb, and outside a dog barks and another answers it, all the way down the row, A chain of dogs passing the night watch along, and you say, yes. Because the first rule of the forge is you don't let go of the tongs. But the second rule, the one nobody wrote down, is that iron is only the second most dangerous thing in the shop. The destrier arrives an hour after prime, and the street clears for it the way water clears around the bow of a boat. You have seen big horses. You have shod plough beasts with feet like dinner platters. This is a different order of creature. He comes up the row led by 2 grooms, one at the head and one at the flank, iron grey, and his shoulder is above the height of your head, and every step of him lands with a weight you can feel through the soles of your feet, and his eye, when it passes across you, does something no plough horse's eye has ever done. It assesses you, it ranks you, it moves on unimpressed. His name, the groom says, is Bayard, which is a joke, because Bayard is the magic horse in the stories, and there is nothing magical about this animal at all. He is a machine built by 50 generations of breeding for one purpose, which is to carry an armoured man into a place where everyone is screaming and things are on fire and not run away. Think about what that means. Think about what has been bred out of him. The flinch that keeps other animals alive, the deep sensible cowardice of the horse, has been carefully, deliberately bred out, and what has been bred in to fill the space is opinion. A destrier is not brave because he is calm. He is brave because he has decided that most things he meets are beneath his notice, and the rest can be bitten. He is also worth more than the forge. Not the work in the forge, building, tools, stock, and every man in it. A trained warhorse sells for more than Master Aldous will clear in years, and if he's lamed by bad shoeing, that loss has a name and an address, and the name is over your door. So watch the master now, because this is a second craft entirely, and he puts it on like the second apron. He does not approach the horse. He stands where the horse can see him, off the shoulder, and he talks. Not to the horse, to the groom. About the road to Yarmouth, about the weather, about nothing, in a low, level, unhurried voice. And what he is actually doing is letting the horse listen to him, letting the animal take the measure of his voice and his stillness, and only when the great ears have stopped swivelling and settled does he move. One slow step at a time, hand first, laying the hand flat on the shoulder, and the muscle under the grey hide shivers once like water when a fly lands and goes still. What? You come forward with the box, and your mouth is dry, genuinely dry, tongue-sticking dry, and you keep your steps slow the way you were taught. No straight lines. Curve in toward the shoulder, never the haunch, never behind, because behind this animal is a country from which boys do not return. A destrier's kick has killed men in armour. There is a farrier in this city, an old man now, sells besoms by the Madder Market, who took a half kick from a courser 20 years ago, a graze, a glancing blow, and his hip has pointed the wrong way ever since. And every smith's apprentice in Norwich has been shown that man, walking, at some point in his training, the way novice monks are shown a skull. The cast shoe is the near hind. Of course it is the hind. The master runs his hand down the leg from the stifle, slow, firm, never lifting the palm from the hide so his touch never disappears and reappears, down over the hock, down the cannon, and squeezes above the fetlock, and Bayard, 19 hands of contempt, considers the request for a long moment, and then, like a duke granting an audience, lifts the foot. The hoof is the size of your 2 hands spread together. The master takes it onto his bent knee, into the fold of his apron. And now, for as long as this takes, he is tied to the animal, bent double, his head down at the level of that leg, in the one position from which no man can move fast. And this is the actual unglamorous shape of courage, this exact posture. And you never see it painted or sung about. A man in a leather apron, folded under 1/2 ton of opinionated animal, calmly trimming. Your work is the fire and the anvil and the running. The shoe was forged rough yesterday. Now it goes to colour, and the fit begins, and fitting is a conversation. Hot iron carried on a pritchel from fire to hoof, pressed to the trimmed foot, the great cloud of stinking smoke, read the scorch, back to the anvil, correct. A blow here at the heel, an easing of the branch there, back to the foot, read again, and you are the runner. You carry the burning shoe back and forth at arm's length past the flank of a warhorse, and the smoke rolls up around the animal's belly, and he does not care. He has smelled worse. He has smelled things you pray you never smell, and his tail switches across your neck like a whip made of hair, casual, monstrous, and you do not let go of the tongs. Then the nailing, and here the shop goes silent inside itself. Hob's bellows keep their rhythm because the fire must live, but everything else in the world narrows to the master's hand, because nailing a shoe is carpentry performed blind inside a living thing. The wall of the hoof is dead, no more feeling than your fingernail, but inside that wall, less than a finger's width inside, is the quick, the living foot, and a nail driven a hair too deep, or angled a degree too far in, enters flesh, and the horse, this horse, will inform the entire street of the error in the space of a single heartbeat. The master sets each nail by feel, taps it, listens. The nail speaks as it goes. A good nail rings slightly duller as it curves outward through the dead wall, and he reads that tiny change in pitch through the hammer, the way you'd read words on a page. 7 nails, 7, tap, 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 ring off the points, clench, file, and set the foot down. Bayard puts his weight on it, stamps once, a blow that you feel in your teeth, and then sighs, an enormous sigh, wet and disdainful and reeking of hay, directly into the master's hair. The head groom pays in silver, coins with the king's face, and while the counting is happening, the second groom, a Norfolk boy no older than you, with the livery on his back and 1 gold earring he's very proud of, leans in close to you and nods at Bayard and says, "Lo, he killed a man in France, before my time, but they all swear it. A Frenchman in the press at a river took him by the bridle, and he took the man's shoulder in his teeth and shook him like a rat." The boy says this with a horror that is exactly half worship, and you both look at Bayard, and Bayard looks back at the two of you with his ears at ease, godlike, hairy, bored, and then the grooms lead him away down the row, and the whole street lets its breath out at once. Dogs and geese and prentices all resuming, and the master straightens his back, one vertebra at a time, a slow private ceremony of clicking, and says to nobody, "Yarmouth's roads can have him." And Hob, who has honoured his instructions to the letter and remained by the hearth and is nearly dead of it, says, "What was it like?" And the master picks up his cold hammer and says, "Like a Thursday, nails, both of you." And that's it. That's the whole speech. That's the trade in a single sentence. The extraordinary has survived, and then it is filed under Thursday, and the nail rod is waiting, and the fire needs coal. But that night, at supper, the master drinks 1 more cup of ale than is custom, exactly 1, and Aldith watches him do it and says nothing, and you understand that fear in a grown master smith is not gone. It is only stored all day somewhere behind the sternum and let out at night, 1 cup at a time, where the apprentices can pretend not to see it. One customer from those years you never forget, and he comes on an afternoon of no importance, a wet Tuesday with a sword wrapped in a blanket. He is old, 60, maybe more, a countryman's face and a soldier's way of standing, and the sword he unwraps on the bench is old too, plain, honest, notched along one edge like a saw, and he wants the notches dressed out and the crossguard tightened, and while the master works, the old man sits on the bench by the wall and talks, in the flat, unbothered voice of men who have decided the past can no longer reach them, and it comes out, in pieces, that he was at Crécy. Crécy. 30 years back, the great battle in France that the whole kingdom still tells itself like a favourite story, and here is a man who stood in it, in the rain of arrows, in the dark, coming down over the hillside, and he does not tell it like the story at all. He tells you the mud. He tells you that he was frightened the entire time, and that everyone was, everyone, and that the men who say otherwise were not there or are lying. He tells you that half his village went over the sea and that he came back, and he looks at his own sword being made smooth again on your master's anvil, and he says, not sadly, just factually, the way a smith reads a colour, it's for my son now. Pray God he only ever wears it. And when he pays and wraps the blade back in its blanket and goes out into the rain, the master works in silence for a long while and then says, to the fire more than to you. The only thing he ever says to you about war, we make the plough and we make the sword, boy. Same fire, same iron. He puts the next bar into heat. Pray you spend your years on ploughs. You think about that more than you expect to in the years that follow. The trade is neutral the way the fire is neutral. It'll make whatever is brought to it. The choosing is done elsewhere, by soft-handed men in halls you will never enter, and what comes down Smith's Row afterward is only the consequences. The bill-hooks in the mustering year, the arrowheads, the old sword with the notches, the plough coulters every blessed autumn without fail. And you understand why the master loves the ploughs, why his face is different on plough days, and you find, as your own judgment ripens in your own hands, that you have caught it from him, the way you caught his walk, and his way of testing an edge, this quiet unspoken doctrine of the town forge, that the highest thing iron ever does is not shine on a hip in a hall. It is to go down into the wet Norfolk earth in October, ahead of the oxen, and turn the ground, and feed people, and wear out doing it, and come back to the fire, and be made new, and go down again. The seasons in a forge are not like seasons anywhere else, and by now you've been through the whole wheel of them 4 times, so you know, summer is the enemy. Everyone in the city complains of summer, but they complain from streets and gardens. You meet it at the hearth. On a July afternoon, the forge and the day gang up on you, the fire at your face and the sun on the thatch above, and the shop becomes an oven with a boy baking in it, and the sweat doesn't bead any more. It sheets, it runs off the point of your chin in a steady drip that hisses when it hits the anvil, actually hisses, and the master sets a bucket of small ale in the corner with a horn cup floating in it, and the rule is drink every heat, no exceptions, because he has seen a strong journeyman go down in a July forge, mid-swing, like a felled tree, and a man who faints toward a hearth does not always get up with the face he had. You work stripped to the waist under the apron, and the apron's edge draws a line across your chest, pale skin below where the leather guards you, red-brown above, speckled with the small dark spark scars that are beginning, you've noticed, to accumulate on you the way they cover the master, your own map starting, and part of you, the 14-year-old part that will never entirely die, is proud of them. Autumn is harvest, and harvest is sickles and scythes, and every ploughshare in 3 parishes coming in for mending at once, because iron is too dear for any farmer to own a spare, and when his share breaks in October mud, his whole winter is standing in your doorway wringing its hat. Autumn is when you learned what the trade is for. Not the priory's finials, not the knight's horse. This, a red-faced man from Trowse with a snapped share, nearly in tears, and the master taking it from his hands like a midwife taking a baby, and the weld done by dinner-time, and the man trying to kiss the master's hand, being refused, kissing yours instead, yours, and going home able to feed his children through the winter, because a fire on Smith's Row can make broken things whole. You didn't sleep well that night either, but for a new reason. Winter is the paradox. Every soul in Norwich is frozen. You alone are warm, and everyone knows it. And so winter is when the forge becomes the parish parlour. Old men drift in, one at a time, casual as cats, and settle on the log bench along the wall where customers wait, and they hold their hands out to your fire, and they stay for hours, and the master permits it. All masters permit it. It is an ancient unwritten toll on the trade, warmth for gossip, and the gossip is not nothing. The bench knows everything. The bench knew Roger of Westwick was circling the priory before the steward said a word. The bench knows whose ship is late from Flanders, whose daughter is marrying, which alderman drinks. A smith stands all day inside the news of the whole city, and the master listens the way he does everything, silently filing. But winter is also chilblains, your toes swelling and itching like fire ants inside your shoes. It's the shock of the loft after the forge, sweat freezing in your shirt between the hearth and the ladder. It's the water in the wash basin frozen so hard you break it with the hammer you bring up for the purpose, and Hobbs' joke every single morning, all winter, 4 winters. The ice needs annealing, which was funny once briefly in the reign of the last king, and in all seasons, underneath everything, there is the fear that has no season. Fire. You have to understand what fire means in this city, because it doesn't mean what it means to you, at home, tonight, with your smoke alarms and your brick walls. Norwich is timber and thatch, thousands of houses of dry wood roofed with dry reed, packed wall to wall inside a stone belt, and every citizen lives every day of their life inside a bonfire that has simply not been lit yet. The city knows it. The city has rules, and the rules have teeth. The curfew bell itself, the couvre-feu, is French for cover fire. That's what curfew means. That's where your bedtime word comes from the nightly ringing that ordered every hearth in every house, banked and covered by law. And the smiths, the professional firekeepers, live under double watch. Your quarter is where the constables stroll slow. Your neighbour's eyes check your smoke without knowing they're doing it. Twice since you came, a chimney fire down the row was beaten out by 40 people who materialised out of nowhere in less than a minute, with a speed and a silence that told you everything about what they were all, always afraid of. There are hooks kept by the churches, great long-shafted iron hooks, and their purpose is not rescue. Their purpose is to pull the thatch off a burning house, or pull the burning house itself down flat, sacrifice one home to save the row, and the leather buckets hang in the church porches in rows, counted by the wardens quarterly, and none of it works very well, and everyone knows that too. The city's true fire plan is prayer and wind direction. You know all this the way you know the weight of your hammer as furniture of the mind, right up until the night in your fifth spring when it stops being furniture. It's April. It's after curfew. It's the smell that wakes you, not your smell. That's the thing. That's what your body knows before your mind is even awake. You sleep every night of your life above banked coal. Your nose lives inside coal smoke. And this is wood. Wood smoke, at night, after curfew, when every fire in the city is dead under ash by law, and some animal part of you that has been keeping watch these 4 years without ever telling you, sits you bolt upright in the dark with your heart going like a drum before you have consciously smelled anything at all. Then you hear it, a sound you have never heard and recognise instantly, the way you'd recognise a wolf without ever having met one. A deep, soft, hungry roar, with a crackle riding on top of it like laughter. And light is coming through the gaps in the loft's gable boards. Orange light, moving. Hob is awake beside you. You don't know since when, and his eyes in the orange dark are all white. And he says the word, the one word, the word this city says the way other places say drowning. Fire. It is not your house. You know that in the first second on the ladder, because the forge below is dark and cold-breathing and innocent, ash lying quiet on the banked coals exactly as you left it. It is not your house, and the relief of that lasts exactly as long as it takes you to reach the street door, because when you get the bar off and the door open, you see whose house it is. It's Simon Tyler's, the wheelwright, 4 doors down, on your side, upwind, upwind. Hold that word. Everything that happens for the next 2 hours happens inside that word. The fire is in his workshop, the long shed behind the house where the wood is, where the seasoned ash and elm for wheel stock is racked to the roof. A shed that is, when you think about it, and everyone on this street is thinking about it right now. A bonfire that someone has spent years carefully constructing, and it has caught at the back and the flames are already standing out of the roof at the far end, standing man-high out of the thatch, ragged and brilliant, and the smoke is not drifting, it is being pushed, flat and fast, over the roofs of the next 4 houses, over your house, sparks ride in it. You can see them, a river of orange stars flowing through the dark directly above Smith's Row, and each one of those stars is looking for a dry reed to lie down in. The street is already filling. This is the thing that no one tells you about medieval fire, the speed of the response, because the response is everyone, instantly. No one is summoned, no one hangs back. The tanner is there in his shirt, the baker's whole household, women, grandmothers, children of 8, with their own small buckets, because everyone on this street owns everything they own within 50 yards of the fire, and there is no such thing as someone else's problem inside a city wall. Someone is hammering on the church door for the hooks. Someone else is already up on Widow Kate's roof next door to the burning shed. You never learn who. A black shape against the glow, hauling wet sacking up on a rope. And in the middle of the street, Master Aldous is taking command, and no one voted, and no one argues. Later you'll understand why it fell to him. Partly because it's the Smith's own quarter, and he's the senior master in it. Partly because half these people have watched him all their lives at his doorway doing the thing this moment requires, standing calmly in front of something hot and making correct decisions quickly. Fire is his trade. Everyone else here fears fire the way you fear a stranger. He fears it the way you fear an animal you've kept for 40 years. He knows what it eats and how it moves and what it will do next, because he has spent his whole life keeping one alive on purpose. Chain, he roars, and his voice is a hammer, and the street sorts itself into 2 lines running down to the common well at the corner, and beyond it to the river stairs. 1 line for full buckets, 1 for empties. Women and children on the empties line, and you're in it. You and Hob, packed shoulder to shoulder with your neighbours, and the buckets begin to come. I want you to live inside this bucket chain for a minute, because you're going to be in it for 2 hours, and it is one of the oldest human machines there is, older than Rome, and your body finds the rhythm of it within a dozen buckets, as though the knowledge were waiting in your arms all along. Take from the right, swing across your body, give to the left. The buckets are leather, hardened leather, sealed with pitch, and a full one weighs like a small anvil and arrives wet. Everything is wet within minutes. Your hands, your sleeves, the street mud churning under 40 pairs of feet, and the swing is all in the hips and the timing. Take, swing, give, take, swing, give, and you cannot see the fire from inside the chain. You can only hear it and read it in the light on the faces of the line opposite. All those faces you know, the whole street's faces, lit up orange and staring past you at the thing you have your back to. And the sounds, the fire's roar rising and falling like something breathing, the unbearable specific crack of green timber failing, the hiss, huge, like the world's largest griddle as each bucket lands. The wheelwright's wife, held up by 2 other women, making a sound that isn't screaming, it's past screaming. It's the sound of watching your entire life burn while your neighbours pour the river on it, 1 gallon at a time. Somewhere a pig, shut in somewhere, losing its mind. And over it all the master's voice, and the sexton's bell now going fast and broken rhythmed, the fire ring, and answering bells starting up across the city, parish wake in parish, the whole dark bowl of Norwich beginning to glitter with lanterns on rooftops, as 1,000 households come up their ladders to look at the sky and ask the only question, which way is the wind? The wind is the master's whole war. You piece this together afterward. He never once tries to save the wheelwright's shed. It cannot be saved. He knows it in the first minute. The wood store has it now, and a wood store cannot be argued with. He spends it. He writes it off like a burned bar of iron, and he fights instead for the line, for the gap, for Widow Kate's roof and the saddler's beyond it. That's where the water goes, onto the houses that are not burning, drowning the thatch downwind so the flying sparks land in sodden reed and die, and he puts the hooks, when the hooks come, not into the burning building but into the little lean-to between the shed and the widow's wall, tearing it down, ripping the fire's bridge out from under it while it is still crossing, and men haul on the hook ropes in teams, and the lean-to comes off its post with a shriek of nails. Your nails, some of them. You realise with a lurch you have nailed things on this street, and it comes down and is dragged, burning, into the middle of the road, into the mud, and beaten there with wet sacks by a dozen people as though it were a snake. At some point in the middle of it, a spark finds your neck. Just one. A fleck of burning thatch, riding the wind river, lands inside your collar exactly where forge scale has landed 100 times, and your body performs the shimmy, the ancient dance, without dropping the bucket, without breaking rhythm, take, swing, give, and the man on your left, the tanner, sees it, and even now, even here, mid-catastrophe, in the orange dark, he grins at you and says, "Bread to it," and passes the next bucket. You will remember that grin all your life. That's what your street is. That is exactly and completely what a street is, and you did not know it until tonight. By the darkest hour of the morning it is over. in the sense that anything is over. The shed is gone, a black steaming ruin with the shapes of wheel rims standing in it, iron rims, his stock, the tyres you helped forge, standing naked in the ash in perfect circles like some monument. The house itself, the dwelling, is saved, half saved, scorched, its back wall charred but standing. Widow Kate's roof is intact and soaked, the gap held, the row held. The city this time is not going to burn, and as that knowledge settles over the crowd, you can feel the fear physically leaving. You can feel 100 bodies letting it out, and it leaves the way a wave leaves a beach, exposing everything. People sit down in the mud, right down in it, all at once, everywhere, like cut puppets. Someone laughs, too loud, at nothing. The wheelwright's wife has gone completely silent, which is worse. The bells stop, one parish at a time, the alarm dissolving back into ordinary night. And overhead, unbelievably, there are stars, ordinary stars, and a blackbird, confused by all the light and commotion, has decided it is dawn and is singing its entire heart out from the churchyard, and nobody has the strength to hate it. You are sitting on your own doorstep with Hob. You're both black from hair to hose. Your arms are not tired. Tired is a word for other days. Your arms have simply left, gone somewhere, and sent no message. Hob's eyebrows are singed on one side, and he has not noticed yet, and you decide, looking at him, out of some newly discovered mercy, to let the morning tell him. And you watch Master Aldous cross the street to Simon Tyler, who is standing in front of the steaming bones of his livelihood, and you watch the master stand next to him, not talking, shoulder to shoulder, both men looking at the ruin for a long time. Then the master says something short, and Tyler bends over like a man taking a blow and puts his hands on his knees and stays that way, and the master puts one hand flat on his back between the shoulders, the way he laid his hand on the warhorse, and leaves it there. You find out what he said the next day, because it is all over the street by noon. He said, "My fire, my forge, and my boys are yours until you're rebuilt. Rims, tools, nails. Pay me when your wheels turn." That's the sentence. That's the whole sentence. And here is what you understand about it, lying in the loft the next night with your scorched neck and your absent arms. It will cost the master real silver, months of it, forged time and iron and your labour and hobs, given to a competitor for wheels, at cost, at less than cost, and he did not hesitate. And it was not soft-heartedness, or not only. You saw his face. It was the same face as the weld. It was a man doing the thing that is done, because the street held the line for 4 hours in the dark, every soul of it, for a burning shed that belonged to one man. And a street like that is not built out of sentiment. It is built the way everything real is built. It is forged one act at a time under heat, and the acts have to be true all the way through, because everyone will be able to see the seam forever. Iron has no memory, streets do. The weeks after the fire are strange weeks, full of double work, your own trade by day and Tyler's rims and rebuilding nails squeezed into the mornings and evenings, and you are more tired than you have ever been, and in a way you can't explain and don't examine, happier. The street treats you differently. Not with words. Streets don't use words. But the baker's wife gives you the misshapen loaves now, the ones that stuck to the peel, and the tanner nods to you as one man to another, and old Coleman at the charcoal yard, when you come for the extra loads, has taken to calling you not Aldous' boy, but young Smith. And the first time he says it, you carry 4 stone of charcoal home without noticing the weight. And then it's Sunday. The first real Sunday. The first one where the double work has eased, and the master, coming from mass, looks at the two of you, grey-faced and hollow, and says the unthinkable. Out! Both of you! I don't want to see you before Vespers. And Aldith puts bread and cheese and 2 hard-boiled eggs into a cloth and pushes it into Hobbs' hands, and the door of the forge shuts behind you with you on the outside of it, in daylight. And for a moment you both just stand in the street like oxen unyoked, swaying slightly, not knowing what freedom is for. Hob knows what it's for. Hob has been planning this in the loft for weeks, whispering it in the dark like a conspiracy. The spire, he says. Dickon says he can get us up the spire. Dickon is a mason's boy, son of one of the Freemasons working at the cathedral, and the cathedral, all your years in this city, has been the thing on the skyline wrapped in its wooden cage. Here's what you know from the bench in your forge, from the old men and the gossip. The cathedral spire has bad luck the way some families have red hair. Generations ago, a great gale threw the old spire down through the roof of the church itself. They rebuilt. Then, when your master was young, rioting citizens and the priory got into a war, an actual war, inside the city, and fire got into the cathedral precinct, and the works have gone on and on and on, and the spire that will one day stand here, though you can't know this, will be the 2nd tallest in all England, and men not yet born will finish it, and it will still be standing, that exact spire, over 300 feet of it, when you, listener, are lying in your bed tonight 6.5 centuries away. But this Sunday it is a stone stump in scaffolding, and scaffolding to 3 boys is a ladder that God has carelessly left leaning against the sky. Dickon meets you at the precinct gate with the enormous casualness of a boy doing something extremely forbidden, and talks you past the porter with some tale about his father's tools. And then you are inside the works, and the works on Sunday are a stopped world. The mason's lodge shuttered, the great treadwheel crane standing empty, half-dressed stones lying about with their measurements scratched on them in the mason's secret marks, everything holding its breath until Monday. And then the ladders. You climb through the inside of the scaffolding, up the tower first, through hatches and along walkways of lashed poles and rough planks, and the climbing is nothing to you. Your arms are forge arms, but the height begins to speak to your body in a language it has never heard. The planks give slightly, springy, underfoot. The wind, which was nothing in the street, finds you more with every stage, first playful, then insistent, then with real hands. Dickon climbs like a squirrel, chattering, entirely at home. This is his forge, you realise. This vertical world of pole and rope and stone is exactly what the fire is to you, a monster his family domesticated generations back, and watching him swing around a standard one-handed at a height that has emptied your stomach into your shoes, you understand something about all trades everywhere. Every craft keeps its own tame terror, and every craftsman's child grows up thinking everyone else's terror is the scary one. And then you come out of the shadow of the works onto the top platform, into the wind and the sun, and Norwich does the thing to you that it has been waiting 4 years to do. The whole city, all at once, below you. You have never been higher than a loft. No one you know has ever been higher than a loft. You're standing at a height that, in your entire world, only masons and angels ever reach, and the city you have lived inside like a mouse inside a wall is suddenly a single thing, one object, laid out and comprehensible, and it is so beautiful and so strange that for a while none of you speaks, not even Dickon. The river first. The Wensum, which at street level is a smell and a crowd and a place you fetch water, is from up here a long ribbon of hammered silver, curled around the city like an arm around a child. Boats on it, small as wood chips, their wakes drawn behind them in lines you could trace with a fingertip. The castle, your huge pale master of the skyline, is from here a toy on a molehill, and you feel an odd disloyal tenderness for it. The wall goes all the way around, you can see it do it. The whole 2.5 miles at once towers like knots on a cord, and inside it the roofs, thousands and thousands of roofs, thatch gold and tile red, steaming faintly in the sun after the night's rained, packed and jumbled and pierced everywhere, by the churches, more than you can count though, hobbies loudly trying, towers and towers and towers, so many that the city looks from above like a field of stone reeds, and the smoke, every roof breathes, hundreds of thin blue threads rising from the city all at once, each thread a hearth, each hearth a family, all of it leaning together in the wind and merging into one soft haze that drifts east, and you find you can read the city by its smoke the way you read iron by its colour. There is the thick smoke of the baker's quarter still busy. There is the black industrial breath of your own street, faint today, Sunday faint. There, on the far hill across the river, the priory where your hinges hang, and you cannot see the door from here, but you know exactly which building it is on, and something in your chest presses outward against your ribs, and you do not have a word for it, though your children will, though not in your language. It is the feeling of having contributed one true piece to something too large to see except from the sky. Hob finds your own street for you, arguing about which smudges which, and finally you locate it, and there it is. Smith's Row. From here it is nothing. A crease between roofs, a hair's width lane, one seam of black among 10,000 roofs, and you can just make out, or convince yourself you can, the gap in the row where Tyler's shed was. A small dark socket, already ringed with the pale yellow of new timber. From the street that fire was the end of the world. From here it is a missing tooth in a smile so wide you can't see both ends of it. The city didn't even notice. The city has burned whole and been rebuilt whole, and will be again, and all your terror of that night is from this height, one spark in a very long fire that has been burning here, in the settled bend of this river, since before the Conqueror, since before the English, since men first found the ford and stayed. My father says, Dickon offers, into the wind with his mouthful of Aldith's cheese, that when the spire's done, a man up here will see the sea. The sea. 20 miles. You look east, where the river uncoils away through the marshes, silver going to white, going to sky, and you cannot see the sea. But for the first time in your life you can see that it is there. You can see the world tilting toward it, and somewhere out there is Yarmouth, where Bayard the man-killer carried his night, and beyond Yarmouth the water, and beyond the water the countries the iron comes from, and it strikes you, standing on a plank in the sky with your hands, your cracked, black, permanent smith's hands, wrapped around a scaffold pole, that you've spent 4 years learning that everything passes across the anvil, and here is the anvil's view. The whole world, one work-piece, glowing faintly in the sun, waiting for whatever is going to be made of it next. You're back before Vespers. You tell the master nothing, and he asks nothing. And at supper he looks at your face, and at Hobbs, sunburned and wind-scoured and lit up like lanterns from the inside. and he looks for a moment as though he might ask, and then he looks instead like a man remembering something from very long ago, and what he says is, "Eat. Monday comes. Monday comes. Monday always comes," and the Mondays begin to stack. This is the part of an apprenticeship that no story ever shows you, because it cannot be shown, it can only be lived. The long middle. The years where nothing happens except everything, where the change is too slow to see and too total to miss. Let time run now, the way it actually ran, and watch what the trade does to the boy. Your body first. Somewhere in your 15th year the sledge stops fighting you. You couldn't name the day. There was no day. There was only the morning you noticed that the 9 pounds had become part of your arm's own opinion, that the swing had moved out of your shoulders and down into your hips and heels where it belongs, that you could strike for an hour and stand ready for the second hour. Your shirt stopped fitting across the back. Your right forearm is visibly thicker than your left. The smith's signature. You see it on every master at every guild gathering. A whole hall of men subtly asymmetrical, like trees that all grew leaning away from the same wind. The burn on your left palm, the one that opened on the morning of the priory Hinges, healed that same summer into a smooth pale patch shaped like a crescent moon, and it was the first scar you ever caught yourself being unable to remember getting the skin without. There are more now. You've stopped keeping count, which is itself the mark. Only new men count. Your sense is next. And this is the part you could never explain to your mother. You hear temperature now. A bar at cherry heat and a bar at orange heat ring differently under the hammer, and you knew that in your 2nd year. But now you hear it without listening, the way you hear rain start. You can stand with your back to the hearth and know from the sound of the fire alone, from the pitch of its breathing, whether Hob has the blast too strong. You know the smell of iron about to burn, that sharp, over-sweet warning that comes half a breath before the sparkling ruin, and you have learned to move on the smell without waiting for the sight. The trade has climbed inside your body and rewired it quietly over 10,000 hours, and what it has built in there is not knowledge. Knowledge is what you had in the 1st year. This is past knowledge. This is the thing the indenture called mystery finally paying itself out. Judgment gone into the hands themselves, so that the hands are wise now even when the head is elsewhere, and the work rises to meet you. It happens the way trust always happens in this house, without announcement. One day the barber's lancets are simply yours, no one checking. Then the fine files. Then, in your 16th year, the day you will not forget, a lock. The under-sheriff's strong-box lock seized and mangled, brought in wrapped in cloth like a wounded bird, and the master looks at it, and looks at the shoeing queue at the door, and sets the lock on your bench, yours, and says, "Mind the springs, they bite," and walks away, and leaves you alone with it. A lock is the highest thing that comes into a town forge, a machine, a thing of wards and springs and tumblers, smithing shrunk down to the size of a whisper, and you work on it with your heart in your mouth for half a day. Files and tweezers and a scribe made from a broken needle, and when it turns over at last, when the bolt throws with that fat, clean snick, you look up, and the master is watching from the hearth, and has been, you have no idea how long, and he holds your eye for a moment and then goes back to his horse. And that snick, that half-second of sound, is the finest wage you've received in 6 years, and both of you know it, and neither of you will ever say so. Hob grows too. Hob at 16 is a head taller than you, a Knox, a cheerful catastrophe of strength, and the two of you have become at the anvil what you will never be able to describe to anyone who has not done double striking. One animal with two hammers. His sledge, your sledge, the master's hand hammer calling the marks, 3-beat time, and on the good days, on the big work, the tyres and the anchor fluke that came up from the Staithe, and the great gate bands for the alderman's yard. The rhythm locks in and holds, and the shop stops being 3 people and becomes one process, and men gather in the doorway to watch. They always gather. There is something in fire and rhythm and moving metal that has pulled human beings in by the eyes since before Rome, and you cannot see the watchers. You are inside the work, but you feel the doorway darken, and you strike, if anything, a little truer. And the bench in the corner keeps talking, winter after winter, and you keep listening, and the world comes through the doorway in pieces, and you assemble it. The French war goes badly. You hear it in the iron before you hear it in the words, in the price of Spanish bars rising, in the arrowsmiths across the city working past curfew by special leave, in the year the commissioners of array came through the county, and every able man was mustered on the heath with whatever arms he had, and the forge for one mad month made nothing but bills and spearheads and repairs to gear that grandfathers had brought home from older wars. The great mortality, the pestilence your parents' generation cannot speak about without their faces changing, circles back through the East Country the way it does. A bad summer, the bells too busy, and the bench goes quiet that season, and old Coleman's seat is empty come Michaelmas, and the new man at the charcoal yard is a nephew, and he does not call you young Smith, and the coal is not the same, and you finally understand why the master pays over the odds for a good fire from a man he trusts. Because everything in this trade, everything comes down to what your fire is made of. Somewhere in there, without ceremony, you stop being homesick. You catch it in the act. Once, a carter mentions your village, just names it in passing, in a list of places on his road, and you wait for the old pull under the ribs, and it doesn't come. There is instead a smaller, stranger feeling, like hearing the name of a boy you were at school with. Your village is where you are from. This street of fire and noise, this loft, this bench of old men, this master, this ox of a fellow apprentice snoring beside you, this is... When did this happen? Nobody asked you. Where you're from now, going forward, for the rest of it. In your 19th year, in the spring, the master takes you to the guild. Not for your freedom, not yet, your term has a year to run. He takes you to the Smith's Guild feast as masters may, to show you, and the hall is loud and long and full of the asymmetrical men, and you're seated far down the table where you belong, and it is there, over the third remove in the candle smoke, that Roger of Westwick, older now, thinner now, his sons at his side, works his way down the hall to your master, and the room does not fall silent, but the room notices. The whole room notices while pretending to notice nothing, and Roger stands in front of Aldous and says loudly enough, "That was well done, with Tyler's shed. The year of the fire. I've meant to say so for some time." And Master Aldous, who has hated this man in his patient banked way for 20 years, stands and considers him and says, "You're Wotton Iron. Who draws it for you?" And just like that they are talking shop, tilted toward each other, 2 grey heads, and within a quarter hour they are arguing about flux like brothers, and you watch from down the table, and you learn the last great lesson of your apprenticeship without a single word being aimed at you, that this too is the trade, that grudges are for men with soft hands, that the fire in the hearth is not the only thing on Smith's Row that has to be banked at night, carefully under ash, so that the street can wake up whole in the morning. Walking home through the dark, curfew quiet, both of you a little full of guild wine, the master says, out of nothing, not looking at you. Next spring your term is out. Yes, master. You'll be made free. You'll journey if you've sense. Lynn, or London even. Work under other fires. Every forge teaches a different fault. A long pause. Your footsteps in step. His and yours you notice exactly in step. When did that start? And when you've done wandering, he says, to the street, to the dark, to the banked city, this forge has no sun in it. That's all. That's the entire speech. 11 words, and he lengthens his stride slightly to end the conversation, and you walk the rest of Smith's Row in silence with your future hanging in the air beside you, glowing gently, like a bar drawn fresh from the fire, still deciding what it is going to be. There is one more thing you do in those last apprenticed years, and you do it in secret, and every smith who ever lived will recognize it, and no one else ever finds out how universal it is. You make your own thing. It starts with scrap. It always starts with scrap. A broken file, too worn to cut, destined for the scrap bin. And a file is not just iron, a file is steel, real steel, hard and hungry, the most precious metal that ever passes through a town forge, and a worn one is the only steel an apprentice will ever be allowed to call his own. You ask the master for it with your heart beating stupidly hard, as though you are asking for his daughter, and he looks at the dead file, and looks at you, and knows instantly and completely what you want it for, because he did the same thing 40 years ago with another dead file in another man's forge, and he grunts, which is yes, and turns away, which is I saw nothing. And so begins the knife. You work on it in the margins, in the grey half hour before the master comes down, when the fire is woken but the day is not, on rain-slow afternoons, on the ends of Saturdays, a stolen heat here, a dozen hammer blows there, weeks between sessions sometimes, and the blade grows the way an apprentice grows, slowly, invisibly, in the gaps of other work. And everything you have ever been taught comes and stands around you while you do it. Every correction, every look, every tap of his hammer showing where, and you discover the terrible truth of working for yourself. The master's standards have gotten inside you. There is no one to blame and no one to satisfy but the thing itself. And you heat and strike and grind and are disgusted and heat again, and the knife teaches you more about your own hands than 4 years of nails did. The hardening you do at night, it has to be night. Steel is quenched by colour, and the colour must be red in dimness, the fire banked low and the shop dark, and you stand there alone, heart going, and bring the blade up through the reds, watching for the exact cherry the master calls blood heat, and when it comes you plunge it, and the slack tub shrieks, a sound like a live thing, steam bursting up around your wrist, and then the tempering, gentler, the slow creep of the oxide colours along the polished edge, straw, then bronze, then the first breath of purple, and at straw-going bronze you stop it, quench again, and it is done, and you stand in the dark holding a knife, your knife, the first object in the entire world that is yours all the way through, made by your judgment, out of your fire, with your hands. It is not perfect. There is a hammer mark low on one flat that you will see every day for the rest of your life, invisible to everyone else, glowing like a beacon to you. The master's knife would not have that mark, but the edge takes hair off your arm in one dry stroke, and the tang is sound, and Hob, sworn to secrecy, handles it in the loft by rushlight with an envy so pure and so loud in the silence that it is better than any praise. And the next week Hob asks the master for a broken file, and the master grunts and turns away, and it begins again, the way it has begun in every forge, generation into generation, this unofficial sacrament that no guild ever wrote down. Before the trade will let you go, you must make in stolen time out of dead steel one true thing that answers to no one, and carry it afterward on your belt where your hand can find it for the rest of your days, a small hard proof, riding at your hip, that the boy who was sold for the price of a spade turned out to be worth somewhat more. You will be buried with a knife on your belt. Most men of your world are. You know which knife it will be. You have known since the night the slack tub shrieked. But that is next spring, and next spring is a country you've not visited yet. Tonight is only tonight. Come back down into it, into the ordinary evening of an ordinary day near the end of your apprenticed years, because this is where I want to leave you, not at the triumph or the fire or the view from the sky, but here, inside the plain gold of a working day ending, which is, if you total up a life honestly, most of what a life is made of. The last customer goes at dusk, a ploughman with a mended coulter over his shoulder, still warm, and he carries it the way they all carry mended iron, a little away from his body, with respect. The master calls the day, and now the closing of the forge, which is a liturgy, the same every night. 600 nights and more you have done it, and your body performs it now the way the monks perform Compline, thought no longer required, only presence. Tools first, every hammer to its place on the wall, and the wall is a map of your master's mind, 30 years in the arranging, and you know it in the dark. The hand hammers by weight, left to right. The tongs on their rail, sorted by jaw, the swages and fullers in their block. The files, always the files, wiped with an oiled rag and laid in the chest apart from each other, for a file's teeth are its living, and files left touching gnaw each other blunt. You sweep the scale and the ash, and the floor of a forge is its own strange creature, packed black earth, hardened by years of heat and hammering and iron dust trodden in, until it is very nearly metal itself, and your broom hisses over it in long strokes and raises the day's last small storm of glitter in the doorway light. Then the counting, bar stock against the wall tallied by eye. Charcoal bin, enough for the morning, then Coleman's nephew by noon. Nails boxed by size. The slack tub topped. 2 buckets, and Hob fetches them. Still, though he could buy and sell you at the sledge now, some orders of precedence never update, and neither of you wants them to. And last, the fire. You bank it yourself now. It passed to you in your 17th year, and it will never pass back. Rake the coals to the heart of the hearth. Mound them, a low, tight dome, every coal touching its neighbours, because a banked fire lives by huddling, exactly like everything else in this city. Then the ash over it, drawn up the sides in handfuls, a blanket thick enough to starve the burning down to a slow smoulder, thin enough that the heart stays alive. And the judging of that thickness is one more of the 10,000 small judgments that have soaked into your hands over the years, and when it is done the fire is a grey mound, silent, apparently dead, and you stand over it for a moment in the dark shop as you always do, and you can feel it very faintly, breathing heat up at you through its covers, alive in there, waiting for the morning and the bellows and the whole thing beginning again. Curfew rings from the churches as you bar the door. Couvre-feu. Cover your fires. The whole city obeying the same bell, 10,000 hearths going under their ash within the hour. The entire glowing life of Norwich banked down for the night into 100,000 sleeping embers, and the watchmen starting their rounds, and the gates in the great wall swinging shut, 12 of them, one after another around the circle, boom and boom and boom, far away like a giant making sure of his locks. Supper is pottage again, and bread, and the fire in the house hearth low, and the mistress's face tired and kind in the light of it, and the master mostly silent, working a knot of wax into the cracks of his hands, an old man's habit arriving early, and hob eating like siege about to be laid, and nobody says anything worth reporting, and it is one of the best hours of your life, and you don't know it. Which is the usual arrangement. You will know it later. That's what later is for. Then the ladder, and the loft, and the pallet, and the dark. Lie there now. Feel the day leaving your body in its fixed order. The same recessional every night. The hands first, always the hands, throbbing gently as the work drains out of them, each knuckle reporting one by one, then falling quiet. The forearms humming their low note, the line across your shoulders where the sledge lives, the feet flat and grateful. Your palms tonight smell of iron and oil and horse. They always do. They will for the rest of your life. No water in Norfolk can get a smith's hands back to whatever they smelled of before, and you stopped wanting it years ago. The city talks itself to sleep below you. You know every sound, and every sound knows you. The watchman's step, unhurried, passing down the row, pausing, you know exactly where. At the gap where Tyler's new shed stands, checking, always checking this street's one shared nightmare, and passing on. The river, when the wind is off it, a smell more than a sound. Mud, cool water, and far-off sea. A dog, another dog further. The great soft nothing where the market's roar was. A silence with the shape of the day still in it. And under your pallet, under the floorboards, under everything, the faint rising warmth of the banked forge, your fire, breathing under its ash, the small captive sun you keep, dreaming its orange dreams 2 floors below your own. Hob is already gone, breathing slow, hands curled to his chest in the old way, the way you both learned before you knew you were learning it, and you drift, and as you drift the thoughts come loose and float the way they do, in no order, weightless. The crescent scar on your palm, the wet shine of iron coming to weld, Bayard's eye, ranking you. The buckets, take, swing, give. The one hand, one step, in passing, on the worst day. 40 hinges in candlelight, the snick of the sheriff's lock, the city from the sky, breathing its 100 threads of smoke. Monks will hang their door on that when your grandchildren are dust. That's the wage, boy. Centuries will pass. The Norwich you know will change past all recognition. The timber and the thatch will burn, some of it, and be rebuilt in brick, and burn again, and be rebuilt again, because that is what cities are. Fires that keep deciding to continue. The spire will be finished by men not yet born, and it will stand, that exact spire, over the same bend of the same river, on the night you are hearing this. The castle will still be on its mound. 100 of the churches will still be standing among the shops and the traffic, stone reeds in a changed field. The wall will survive in pieces, and people will walk past those pieces on their way to work, carrying small glowing rectangles, not glancing up. And the anvils will go quiet, one by one, over the centuries, until a working forge is a rare thing, a demonstration, a memory kept alight on purpose, but not gone. never quite gone. Somewhere near you, tonight, within a few miles of wherever you're lying, there is iron that came over an anvil, in a hinge, in a gate, in a horseshoe nailed over a door for luck, and someone's hands made it, hands with cracked knuckles and a map of small scars, hands that ached at night exactly the way the boy's hands are aching now in a loft in 1371, and the ache is the same ache, and the sleep it earns is the same sleep. Because some things don't change. The body that worked all day doesn't change. The fire banked safe under ash doesn't change. The need, at the end of it, to lie down in the dark in a warm place, with the day put away in its right order, every hammer on its hook, every ember huddled close. Everything counted, everything held. That doesn't change either. So let it come now. Let sleep take you the way it took Watt in his loft above the forge, 650 years ago, with the warmth rising through the boards beneath him. Let the tools go back on the wall. Let the fire sink under its blanket of ash, alive but resting, quiet but not gone. Let your hands uncurl. Let the noise of your own long day bank itself down, ember by ember, thought by thought, until only the warm heart of it is left, covered over, safe, keeping through the night. You've stood your hours, you've kept your fire, you've earned this rest, you've earned this rest, you've earned this rest. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.